Welcome to North Carolina's Working with Real Estate Agents conversational overview. Please listen closely to this disclaimer. This video is intended solely to complement the dialogue between prospective customers and their real estate agents. It is not a substitute for a direct personalized discussion with your agent. Instead, it serves as an additional reference point to the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure and disclosure. Your agent should provide you with the brochure prior to viewing this video and assist with any questions you may have regarding its content. Please consult the brochure and engage in open communication with your agent for a thorough understanding of your rights and responsibilities in working with real estate professionals. This video is led by the AI twin of Yahweh, the principal broker of Nobilis Realty, along with her AI friends. Thanks for joining. Please hold or write down your questions until the end of this video overview. Let's get started.
When buying or selling real estate, you may find it helpful to have a real estate agent assist you. Real estate agents can provide many useful services and work with you in different ways. In some real estate transactions, the agents work only for the seller. In other transactions, the seller and buyer may each have their own agents. And sometimes the same agent or firm works for both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. It is important for you to know whether an agent is representing you as your agent or simply assisting you while acting as an agent of the other party. For your protection, do not share any confidential information with a real estate agent or assume that the agent is acting on your behalf until you have officially entered into a written agreement with the agent to represent you. Otherwise, the agent can share your confidential information with others, and this could hurt your ability to negotiate the best deal. For example, let's imagine for a second that you went online or drove by a stunning home with a for sale sign in the yard. The outside looks to have everything you love, so you jot down the contact information and called the number to schedule a showing. If you start telling them how much you are pre-approved for or how much you have towards a down payment, you may have just hurt your chances of negotiating the best deal. Legally, a seller has the option of contributing up to 6%, which is a form of currency, towards the buyer's closing costs, but would likely be unwilling to do so if they have advanced knowledge of your assets shared with them by the agent who was simply assisting you in the transaction. To assist buyers and sellers in understanding the roles of real estate agents, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission requires agents in sales transactions to review the Working with Real Estate Agents disclosure. This information must be discussed at first substantial contact before an agent can ask for or receive your confidential information. Also, the agent must give you a copy of the disclosure form after you sign it. The disclosure form is not a contract, but it is for your education and protection, and signing it is simply acknowledging that the agent discussed the information with you. This conversational version of the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure assumes that you are a prospective buyer and answers common questions about the various types of agency relationships that may be available to you. It is designed specifically to help you decide which relationship you want to have with a real estate agent, as well as provide useful information about the various services real estate agents can provide buyers and sellers. Also covered in this video is an explanation on how real estate agents are paid, as well as frequently asked questions. Important note about racial equality and fair housing. The Commission is committed to the principles of excellence, fairness, and respect for all people. It is our goal to ensure that brokerage activities are conducted in fairness to all and to end discrimination in the sale or rental of all real estate. In residential sales and rental transactions, agents must comply with the Fair Housing Act. This prohibits discrimination on the basis of the race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, national origin, handicap, or family status of any party or prospective party. For more information on the NC Fair Housing Act, you have options. You may visit the website in the printed version sent to you by the real estate professional presenting this video. Scan the QR code in this video on your camera phone, or visit www.nobilisrealty.com and follow the link to the brochure at the bottom of the page.
What does the word agency mean?
The relationship between a real estate agent and the buyer or seller who hires the agent is referred to as an agency relationship because the real estate agent acts on behalf of, meaning as an agent for the buyer or seller, also known as the client. In an agency relationship, the agent has certain duties and responsibilities to their client.
What is an agency agreement?
An agency agreement is a contract between you and a real estate firm that authorizes the firm and its agents to represent you. The agency agreement between buyers and agents is typically called a buyer agency agreement. Between sellers and agents, a listing agreement. Be sure to read and understand the agency agreement before you sign it. If you do not understand it, ask the agent to explain it. If you still do not understand, you may want to consult an attorney before signing the agreement. Your agent must give you a copy of the agreement after you sign it. Is there a standard length of time for agency agreements? No. The term or length of an agency agreement is negotiable. Real estate agents are allowed to determine their own policies for the lengths of their agency agreements. However, a prospective buyer or seller may request a different length of time than proposed by an agent. If an agreement cannot be reached with the agent, the buyer or seller may seek another real estate agent willing to agree to a different length of time. Every agency agreement must have a definite expiration date.
Here are some of the most frequently asked questions for buyers.
I want to buy real estate. What do I need to know about working with real estate agents?
When buying real estate, you may have several choices as to how you want a real estate firm and its agents to work with you. For example, you may want them to represent only you as a buyer agent. You may be willing for them to represent both you and the seller at the same time, as a dual agent. Or you may agree to let them represent only the seller, as a seller's agent or subagent. Some agents will offer you a choice of these services. Others may not.
What are a buyer agent's duties to a buyer?
If the real estate firm and its agents represent you, they must promote your best interests. Be loyal to you. Follow your lawful instructions. Provide you with all material facts that could influence your decisions. Use reasonable skill, care, and diligence, and account for all monies they handle for you. Once you have agreed in writing for the firm and its agents to be your buyer agent, they may not give any confidential information about you to sellers or their agents during the agency relationship without your permission. But until you make this agreement with your buyer agent, you should avoid telling the agent anything you would not want a seller to know.
Must a buyer have a written agency agreement with the agent who represents the buyer?
To make sure that you and the real estate firm have a clear understanding of what your relationship will be and what the firm will do for you, you may want to have a written agreement when you first begin working with an agent. If you decide to make an offer to purchase a particular property, the agent must enter into a written agency agreement with you before making a written or oral offer. If you do not sign the agency agreement, then the agent can no longer represent and assist you and is no longer required to keep information about you confidential.
A special note, although not a requirement by the Commission, firms that are members of the National Association of Realtors are unable to represent you as a buyer agent without a written agreement. Agents who are also realtors are required to have a written agency agreement prior to showing any property offered for sale.
What services might a buyer agent provide?
When you have a written agreement, a buyer agent will perform a number of services for you. These may include helping you find a suitable property, arrange financing, learn more about the property, and otherwise promote your best interests. If you have a written agency agreement, the agent can also help you prepare and submit a written offer to the seller.
How is a buyer's agent compensated?
A buyer agent can be compensated in different ways. For example, you can pay the agent out of your own pocket. Or the agent may seek compensation from the seller or listing firm first, but require you to pay if the listing firm refuses. Whatever the case, be sure your compensation arrangement with your buyer agent is clearly indicated in a buyer agency agreement before you make an offer to purchase property, and that you carefully read and understand the compensation provision. Your agent will elect to discuss and confirm the seller's offer of your agent's compensation up front before an offer is made. The listing agent will disclose it in writing to your agent as well as the sellers prior to an offer being made. This creates transparency and outlines financial expectations of both buyer and seller clients.
What happens if I want to buy a property listed by the same agent or firm that represents me?
You may permit an agent or firm to represent you and the seller at the same time. This would mean that the real estate firm and all of its agents would represent you and the seller equally. This dual agency relationship will happen if you become interested in buying a property listed with your agent's firm. If you have not already agreed to a dual agency relationship in your written or oral buyer agency agreement, and this is acceptable to you, then your buyer agent will ask you to amend the buyer agency agreement or sign a separate agreement or document permitting his or her firm to act as agent for both you and the seller. Any agreement between you and an agent that permits dual agency must be put in writing no later than the time you make an offer to purchase. Both the seller and you as buyer must consent in writing to dual agency.
What is the risk if I agree to dual agency?
Dual agency creates a potential conflict of interest for the firm that represents you since its loyalty is divided between you and the seller. It is especially important that you have a clear understanding of what your relationship is with the firm and all of its individual agents, since all of them are dual agents. This can best be accomplished by putting the agreement in writing at the earliest possible time and asking any questions that you may have. A dual agent must treat buyers and sellers fairly and equally and cannot help one party gain an advantage over the other party. Although each dual agent owes both their clients the same duties, buyers and sellers can prohibit dual agents from divulging certain confidential information about them to the other party.
How can I reduce the risk if dual agency occurs?
To minimize conflicts of interest, some firms also offer a form of dual agency called designated dual agency, where one agent in the firm represents only the seller and another agent represents only the buyer. The firm and the firm's other agents remain in dual agency. This option, when offered by a firm, may allow each designated agent to more fully represent each party. Under designated dual agency, each agent designated to represent the buyer is prohibited from disclosing 1. That the buyer may agree to any price or terms other than those established by the buyer, 2. The buyer's motivation for buying, and 3. Any information the buyer has identified as confidential, unless otherwise required by statute or rule.
What happens if the buyer agency agreement expires?
If the buyer agency agreement expires after you entered into a contract to purchase a property, then your agent may continue to represent you through the date of the closing, and you may be responsible for compensating the firm in accordance with the provisions of the buyer agency agreement. If you are not under contract to buy a property when your buyer agency agreement expires, then your agent must immediately stop representing you unless you first enter into a new buyer agency agreement with the agent. There is a simple form your agent can send you to extend the agreement prior to its expiration date, along with negotiating additional terms if needed.
Can I buy real estate without hiring a real estate agent?
Yes. If the real estate agent or firm that you contact does not offer buyer agency, or you do not want them to act as your buyer agent, you can still work with the firm and its agents. However, they will be acting as the seller's agent or sub-agent.
The agent can still help you find and purchase property and provide many of the same services as a buyer's agent. The agent must be fair with you and report any material facts, defects such as a leaky roof, about properties. But remember, the agent represents the seller, not you, and therefore must try to obtain for the seller the best possible price and terms for the seller's property and cannot give you advice on buying the property if it will conflict with the seller's interests. Furthermore, a seller's agent is required to give the seller any information about you, even personal, financial, or confidential information that would help the seller in the sale of his or her property. Agents must tell you in writing if they are seller's agents before they ask you about anything that can help the seller. But until you are sure that an agent represents you and is not a seller's agent, you should avoid saying anything you do not want a seller to know.
If I am an unrepresented buyer, who pays the real estate agent?
Unless you agree otherwise, sellers' agents are compensated by the sellers.
Can the real estate agent who represents the seller require me to hire an agent to represent me?
No. While it may benefit you to hire an agent, there is no law requiring a buyer to hire a real estate agent to buy real estate.
If I hire a real estate agent or firm to represent me, can I terminate the agency agreement before it expires?
Maybe. An agency agreement is a contract between a buyer or seller and a real estate firm. Most agency agreements do not contain a provision allowing a buyer or seller to terminate the agreement before it expires without the consent of the other party. Generally, one party cannot terminate the agreement without the consent of the other party. If you and the firm both agree to terminate the agreement, then you both should sign a written agency termination agreement. If the agent asks for compensation in exchange for terminating the agreement, then you can agree or disagree or try to negotiate the amount of compensation. If an agency agreement contains a penalty or fee for early termination, the provision specifying the penalty or fee must be set forth in a clear and conspicuous manner. If you are not able to reach an agreement on the termination of the agency agreement, then you may consult your own attorney or simply wait until the agency agreement expires. The Real Estate Commission does not have the authority to terminate agency agreements or to force a real estate agent to terminate an agreement. At Nobilis Realty, we believe real estate relationships are more important than transactions. Our company mission includes elevating prosperity, igniting transformation, and enriching lives with real estate. We believe that real estate done right means more than just selling real estate. It means we are constantly working to earn your lifelong business based on our stellar service. Therefore, prior to a purchase agreement being affirmed, if you feel we are not meeting or exceeding your expectations as your buyer's agent, we will happily assist you with terminating the contract. If you are already under contract, we will address your concerns and continue to represent you in the best way through the end of your transaction. Thank you very much for taking the time to review this video. If you have any questions or for the next steps in your purchase process, please reach out to the agent who shared this information. We bid you much success in your property search, and we look forward to guiding you towards a smooth closing and beyond.